It began with a pause, a silence so heavy that the studio lights seemed to dim just a little. Graham Norton, the ever-smiling maestro of late-night banter, looked away from the camera, lost in a memory he rarely speaks of. Then he spoke a sentence that sent ripples through the entertainment world. "There was one guest, one person I found genuinely difficult to work with," he said, and for the first time, he revealed the name that stunned millions: Kathy Griffin. Most people know Kathy Griffin as the fiery, fearless comedian who never shies away from controversy. But what Graham Norton revealed wasn't gossip. It was a human story, a collision of personalities, pressures, and the hidden emotional toll of fame. Picture this: bright cameras, rolling laughter, and an audience that expects magic. That's the world Graham lives in. For years, he welcomed A-list stars and emerging talents alike, guiding conversations with a warmth that felt effortless. But behind that warmth was a carefully guarded professionalism, one built from decades in the spotlight. Then came the night, the show that would be talked about for years. The crew calls it the incident, though few outside that inner circle know the full truth. Witnesses say the air backstage was thick with unease. Kathy Griffin had arrived late, flanked by her team, smiling for the cameras, but something was off. There was tension in her eyes, not anger, not fear, something harder to define. Graham watched as the clock ticked toward airtime. In rehearsal, jokes meant to be playful landed like stones. A suggestion from the director was met with a sigh. Words were clipped. For the first time in his career, Graham felt something he'd never expected: weary. And then they were on air. Thousands tuned in, unaware of the storm brewing just out of frame. The first few minutes were classic television. Polished, witty exchanges, laughter from the crowd. But something shifted when the conversation turned personal. Kathy began to speak about her struggles, the very real battles with mental health, the losses she endured, the scars fame had left on her soul. It was raw. It was vulnerable. It was something no late-night show was prepared to handle. The audience, unsure whether to laugh or cry, sat in stunned silence. Backstage, producers whispered. Cameramen exchanged uneasy glances. Graham, seasoned and steady, tried to navigate the moment with his trademark grace. But the words that followed, sharp, unfiltered, laced with pain, cut deeper than anyone anticipated. "What did I do to deserve this?" Kathy asked, her voice trembling. A joke was meant to follow, something light to diffuse the tension, but it never came. Instead, she stared at Graham as if searching for a lifeline. That pause, that precious, terrifying silence, was the moment many say changed everything. After the show, the studio emptied faster than usual. No speeches, no applause, just hurried goodbyes. Graham walked past the darkened stage alone, the echo of that interview lingering like a stubborn ghost. Later that night, in the solitude of his hotel room, he sent a message, a simple, heartfelt note: "I'm here if you want to talk." Days passed. The interview went viral, dissected on talk shows and social media. Some called it a disaster. Others saw it as one of the most honest moments in television history. But behind all the noise was a very human truth. Two people both brilliant, both vulnerable, had collided on a public stage, and neither walked away unmarked. In his revelation, Graham didn't say he hated Kathy Griffin. He chose his words carefully. What he expressed was something deeper, more complicated, a profound sense of discomfort, not with her as a person, but with the rawness she brought into a space that trades in control and performance. He spoke of the weight he felt when someone refuses to play by the invisible rules of television, not because they're unprofessional, but because they're wounded, because they carry pain that doesn't pause for commercial breaks. There were interviews after where fans asked Graham if he would ever invite Kathy back. He didn't give a simple yes or no. Instead, he asked a question that now sits at the heart of this story. When does vulnerability become too much for the world to see? And who decides that line? That question isn't easy, and maybe that's the point. In the weeks that followed, Kathy Griffin disappeared from the spotlight. Rumors circulated, theories blossomed, truths tangled with speculation. But those closest to her say she retreated to heal, not hide. She called friends, apologizing for nothing, explaining everything, trying to stitch together the pieces of a moment that had unraveled in real time. Graham, too, changed. He spoke less about that night, choosing instead to reflect on the limits of performance and the danger of expecting entertainers to be anything other than human. He learned that empathy, real empathy, does not always come with applause. And now we are left with the echoes of that encounter. What does it mean when two powerful personalities clash? When does honesty become too raw for the screen? And what happens to the people behind the jokes when the laughter dies? Graham's confession wasn't just about a difficult guest. It was a mirror, a reflection of all of us who have ever struggled to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted in our unguarded moments. So we ask again, in a world hungry for spectacle, can there be room for genuine emotion? Can vulnerability ever be welcomed without fear? The answer, perhaps, is not yet written.